So now that our big body bonanza is over and everyone has had a chance to share their reflections and everyone has had a chance to show other people what they know, I'd like to start kind of backwards. I'd like to start with, what questions do you still have, or what things are you still wondering a little bit about? You're not sure if you were right. What questions might you still have, or what are you still wondering a little bit about? Maybe even what would you just like to find out a little bit more about? Okay. Javier?
I'm wondering, since the larynx, it contains vocal cords, I wonder if the larynx contains something as well.
How could you find out the information? How could you find out the answer to that? Okay. Ashkan?
I want to know more about the digestive system because I don't know that much about it.
Okay. What specifically would you like to know more about?
Like how the food goes, how much food is in our stomach.
Okay. In our stomach when? Like the whole time or before it goes through the system? Or okay. Salman?
I'm wondering, what's like the really sound in your body, or is it like boring and like there's no sound?
Okay, so you'd like to find out a little bit more about the sounds?
Yeah, like in your body. So
okay.
So imagine like a circuitry
yeah.
system like actually working. Would it go like that or something?
That's an interesting question, and one we might have to do a little thinking about based on what we find out. Did anyone else have any questions or wonderings about what they had, about what they researched? Were there any questions today that made you stop and think, even if you found out the answers later, but maybe even originally kind of made you a bit unsure? Jenna?
This question, it didn't really make sense to our group, but someone asked, how does food affect the brain?
Okay, and why didn't it make as much sense?
Because we were doing the nervous system, and it doesn't go through the stomach.
Okay, but the nervous system is still controlled by the brain, right?
Yeah. But like,
yeah.
Food doesn't actually go to the brain.
Oh. So that kind of made you think. Was that a student question or an adult question? Okay. Was there any other questions that people had that even at one point made them think? Claire?
Can a person live with one lung?
Okay. Who asked you that question?
I think it was Mr. Clements, and we found out the answer that actually Pope had part of his lungs taken out, and he's still living today.
And you know what I really liked about that is that your group was kind of stumped initially on that question, but you decided to go through and research at a time when you kind of had a few extra minutes to find out the answer, which is good. It's okay not to know everything all at once. Okay? Yeah. Is there anyone else who had a question? Were there any other questions today that made you stop and think, even if you figured out the answer later? Layla?
Claire's mom asked us how many times do you breathe a minute, and we figured it out, but, well, Claire's mom told us, but it wasn't as much as we thought it was. It was 12 to 16 times a minute.
Oh. And you what would you have expected?
Like 30.
Okay, why?
I thought you breathe a lot more.
Okay. How else could you have figured that out if Claire's mom hadn't told you?
We could have seen how many times it took to breathe in any 1 minute.
Okay. How else could you have figured out that information if mom hadn't told you?
You could breathe in and breathe out and breathe in and breathe out and time yourself in a minute and see how many times you breathe in and out.
Okay. Is there any other way that you could have figured out the answer to that question?
It's not another way. It's just a question.
Okay.
It's like, are there different, like, is it 12 to 16 for when you're just, like, reading, or is it, like, 20 to 30 when you're running and jogging?
That is an interesting question. Ella?
Answer that. I think what she means is on average is 12 to 16, like when you're not like breathing really hard or you're breathing like just normal.
Aiden, what were you going to say?
I know that your pulse goes in the morning.
What is it?
94.95 times. Around the 9th grade, I was at home when I was really bored. That's
I wonder if everyone has the same pulse, though.
like average. Like I was great at basketball. So
You said it was right. So if he timed himself right after basketball, what would you expect about his pulse rate versus if I timed myself after doing, I don't know, reading report cards for 20 minutes? I don't know why I'm thinking report cards, but. Jack, what would you think?
yours would be like low and his would be really high because he's been moving really more and really harder.
Okay. Yes?
It was more like half an hour, like 50 and half an hour.
Okay.
Because I was settling down, I was
Okay. So if you had taken your pulse right after you played basketball, what would you have expected? Why? Okay. Anyone else have something?
Just like he said, once there was another school
Yes.
I went to, it had an open gym,
Yes.
right? And when I went, I stayed there for like 3 hours. So like the second I went out of the room and I ran out, I was outside, my shorts, and then I went into the car and my mom's car, and then I started feeling this like my pulse going super fast. It was kind of like it felt like a bug punching on my head.
And why do you think that was?
Because I just played for 3 hours.
Okay. Now, Layla.
Me and Claire, I thought we found that you breathe 60 to 70 times. Your heart goes 60, beats 60 to 70.
And I wonder if there is, as somebody else, and I think it was Ella who said it, an average. Like if everybody timed their heart rate, I'm wondering if we would all have the same heart rate or if we'd all have a slightly different one. What do you think? Rudy, what do you think?
It might change depending on how big your muscles are.
Okay.
And it kind of changes when you think a lot too. Because when you think, you use energy. And when your muscles are big, they need more energy to move around.
Yeah.
So I think that when the more bigger they are,
Yeah.
the more pulses you're gonna need, because every pulse is like a heartbeat. It's a heartbeat. The heartbeat is a blood thing that sends blood to your muscles, so it can move.
Okay. And Claire?
I got 13 for the minute.
Beats?
No, breathing.
Oh, breathing.
I counted it and now it on my face and I got red.
Kind of an interesting concept. Now, the other last point that I'd like to ask is a slightly different one. As I went to a number of groups towards the end of the sessions, many of you mentioned that you weren't as excited about the fact that there seemed to be fewer questions from people. People weren't asking a lot of questions. How did you feel about that and why? How did you feel about the fact that people were not asking as many questions and why? Madeline?
Well, they're either really shy,
Okay.
or we just explained it really well.
Okay. But how did you feel about the lack of questions coming to you? What did people...
It was like we just explained it and they watched it and that was it.
Okay, so you were happy with it. You just felt you did a good job with it. Okay. Jenna?
Actually, I heard like one person who asked a lot of questions, and I felt like we didn't explain it well enough to that person. different systems connecting.
Okay. And Ella?
Red.
I was kind of getting bored because people were just like, we explained it to them for like 2 minutes and they're just like, okay.
Okay. So what would have made it better then? What kind of questions would you want people to ask you? Allie?
Same as she said, like our group just explained it all, and the kids, like for the grade 5s, they were getting
Yeah?
asking questions, writing it down. But for the other kids, they were just saying, okay, and then they walked away. But I hope that they said like asking questions like, how does this connect to this? How does blood flow here? How does this send a message here?
Okay.
I think you should explain it after they ask you the questions.
So you think the question should start it?
Yeah, because if you explain it everything to them, you know, they're just like, oh, okay, yeah, bye-bye. But if they ask the questions first, they kind of, you know, they don't know what's going on.
Yes.
So they tend to be more curious, and the more curious they are, the more questions they ask.
Okay. Aiden and then Jenna. Yes? Okay. Okay. And then let them do it? Jenna?
What our group did was we did let them ask the questions first,
Yes?
but we kind of said, like, I started saying things like, do you think you know the nervous system? And then they'd say yes or no, and if they said no, we'd explain it. And if they said yes, then we'd quiz them.
Okay. Waleed?
There's this girl from, I think it was Miss Ryan's stuff.
Yes?
She said she actually, like, we were explaining it and then we got something wrong. She started correcting us. And then I'm like, how do you know this? She's like, because my brother is Caleb
Oh, Callan? Yeah?
from grade 1. And I'm like, oh. And then she started explaining even more.
So she taught you something? That's pretty awesome. Now, I'd be curious about the kinds of questions that are asked. Would you rather have straightforward questions that have an easy kind of right-wrong answer? Or would you rather questions that make you think? Why? Would you rather questions that make you think or questions with a straightforward right-wrong answer? And why? Katerina?
I would rather have ones that make us think.
Why?
Those make us smarter and they take more time to
Okay. And Ella?
Well, it's kind of a combination, so I think we should have questions that make us think about the right and wrong answers.
Okay. Can you tell me a little more? What do you mean?
Like, they make you think there is a right or wrong answer. So
Okay. Why?
you have to think about what the answer is.
And Rudy?
I think the thinking ones, because if you think about it, the thinking ones are like the brain exercise. It's like a jog. You have to pace yourself, so you have to go fast.
Yes.
You have to think a lot. So you have to like think back on everything you know,
Yes.
and like pick the things that are, you know, the answers.
Okay. Anyone else have, if they would prefer a straightforward or a thinking one? Jackim, what would you prefer, straightforward or thinking? Why?
Straightforward and it would be easier than having to comment.
Okay. Salman, what about you? Or thinking, what would you rather? Why?
Or no, actually maybe straightforward because like you know the answer and you've been researching for like
A while.
a while. So you basically know the answer, so why would you like stop talking and like trying to think well but you know the answer. So you can just say like.
Layla, what would you rather, straightforward or thinking?
I agree with Ella.
Okay.
One that makes you think about it right.
Why?
It's like a mix, and like it's more the thinking, but it's like not too.
Okay. What do you think, Basil?
I'll choose the thinking question because you could learn something new.
And this I have to ask because I mentioned it to her today and now I'm kind of curious myself. Many people said to me that they missed the fact that Miss Bishop didn't come up this time, which she couldn't because she was in meetings all day. But I'm curious as to why so many people said that they missed Miss Bishop. Because I didn't ask that question and now I'm really curious. And when I told her, she wanted to know. Claire?
Because she always asks good questions and she listens to them and helps us think more.
Okay. Why else did people miss Miss Bishop this time?
Some people like getting stumped.
Does Miss Bishop tend to stump us? It's okay. She stumps me sometimes too. That makes you feel better. And I like that. Anybody else have a reason that they missed having Miss Bishop? Because many of you mentioned it to me. I'm just curious. Did you have a reason too? I don't know if it's the same. No? Okay. Yes?
She gave us those thinking questions.
Good. And you know what? I have to say, it makes me happy that people want to think, even if they don't all know the right answers, because I was impressed with the number of people that even over a nutrition break today went and looked up some information that they didn't know from this morning so they could share it at lunch or that they could share it after lunch. So when Mr. Clemens asked your group, for instance, about the lungs, you found out that information so that after nutrition break today, you could share it with every other group that came by. And the number of students on the way out that told me how impressed they were with that they didn't know that before, was really quite interesting. So it's nice to have a thinking question that will force us to learn something new.